Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football.
Seahawks fans, welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down as usual with co-host Keith Myers. How you doing, Keith?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good. Doing really good, actually. It's got out early, was up early this morning, had the dogs to the dog park already, had coffee. I went to the gym. I got some stuff done this morning for work, and here we are. So it's good to be with you. We're here to talk AFC today. So our last show we did an NFC top 10. We're going to do the same thing for the AFC this show. Looking at the top 10 AFC teams. I really probably could have done top 15 because it's loaded. It's loaded.
It really is.
So why don't you get started and give me your 10th ranked team in the AFC, Keith?
My 10th ranked team. I don't even know if they'll be on your list, but it's more on there because of coaching than anything. But I went with Pittsburgh.
Oh, wow. Me too.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that. I was like, okay, you wouldn't have them on there.
Yeah. So yeah, I went with Pittsburgh. Reason being, yeah, you mentioned the coaching, obviously, long time coach. They signed some pretty cool players. Cole Holcomb at linebacker. I'm not too enamored with Patrick Peterson at cornerback, but they seem to like him there. Alayden Roberts, the outside linebacker, Herbig, the guard, Keanu Neal, Marcus Golden on outside linebacker. They had a decent draft. Probably the second or third best offensive tackle in the draft in Broderick Jones.
Mm-hmm.
After losing, did they lose? I thought they lost a tackle, but Joey Porter from Penn State made a lot of sense for them at corner. Keanu Benton, the defensive tackle from Wisconsin, is a good sign. Darnell Washington, the big, huge tight end, gives them some options to add essentially another tackle to their offensive line when they're running the ball. So it's a decent team, but not a great team. And in the AFC, in the NFC, I think they'd be a playoff team. In the NFC, they are on the outside looking in just because there's a whole bunch of talent in front of them.
Yep. This is an absolutely loaded conference. You've already said it. We're going to say it again, I'm sure. It's going to be hard for good teams to make the playoffs. And I think this is one of those cases.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Ultimately, though, people count them out because of quarterback situations and all these other things. But in the end, this is one of the best coached teams, just straight up, period. And they seem to win games they shouldn't every year, and they're always in the playoffs. And even when they're having down rebuilding years like last year, they're above 500 and in the playoffs. So yeah.
No, I agree. Tomlin's a great coach. He's the second longest tenured coach, I believe, in the NFL. And I like them. I like Najee Harris at running back is a great talent. I'm not sure about Kenny Pickett yet.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to like him. They got Mitch Trubisky to back him up. I'm not thrilled with their quarterback, and that's kind of why I think I held them at 10. They could have been easily, at the 15th ranked. I wouldn't have batted an eye. There's probably 4 or 5 teams in the AFC that you could put in this spot.
Oh yeah.
Which shows just how hard it is for any AFC team to make the playoffs. But a decent roster. It's not special. I think they're still, if they would be honest, they're still in this rebuilding mode, quote unquote, maybe year 2 or 3 of a 3 or 4 year rebuild. I think that they hope to make the playoffs, but I think that would require other teams to falter.
Yeah. But at the same time, um, they seem to do it every year, so don't completely count them out.
True. True. All right. How about your 9th ranked team?
Well, I started last time. It's your turn to lead. Who do you have for 9?
Well, I've got the Jacksonville Jaguars, actually.
I've got them up much higher,
Really?
but we'll get there.
Okay. Doug Peterson, the coach, kind of turned him around a little bit, had to reset that roster, reset the attitude there for that team. Obviously Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback, is a great leader. I think he still needs to come into his own a little bit. He's not a great stats guy, but he's certainly capable of putting up numbers in the right situation and with the right talent around him. And they're beginning to try to do that, I think. Defense is probably the question mark for me. I don't think they're going to have any problem on offense, but we'll see. They signed Juwan Taylor, or excuse me, they lost Juwan Taylor at right tackle, Arden Key, Shaquille Griffin, Marvin Jones, the wide receiver. Although that probably wasn't a big loss. He's getting a little older, and they really didn't replace those guys in free agency. This is why I didn't have them ranked higher. I think that their roster stayed fairly even. I think they're a little better because it's the second year of Doug Peterson being there. You've got Trevor Lawrence with one more season under his belt, and they had 4 draft picks, Keith. So they really didn't have an opportunity to really add to their roster. They added Anton Harrison to play tackle for them, and he'll probably end up starting right away. Other than that, just
Jacksonville had a whole pile of draft picks.
Oh, well, yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. But all of them were, 4th round and later. I mean, they had 10 picks after the 4th round.
Yeah, they had 13 total.
And so they really just had a pile of filler roster, back end kind of stuff. Not a lot of impact players is what I meant to say.
I don't know. There's a couple on here. A couple of 5th round picks, Yasser Abdullah and Antonio Johnson, linebacker and safety respectively, that I think can come in and make an impact right away, even though, later, but guys that you and I talked about a lot pre-draft, and
Absolutely.
guys I really like. So, and I think you add in, Anton Harrison at offensive tackle to replace the guy they lost. And then an extra running back and Tank Bigsby. I agree with you. I think the offense is going to be good. I think it's also an extremely young team that will just get better. And the defense is the question, especially with a guy like Quill Griffin moving on. Now that they've got to replace a cornerback, and that can be a little harder. I mean, he was overpaid, but still,
Yeah.
it's still a talent, right? And
Yeah, and they picked up Antonio Johnson, but that's again, probably the 4th or 5th corner on their roster. But I don't think that they really thought or valued Griffin, to be honest. And Griffin kind of hung out there in free agency and signed a veteran minimum deal with another team. So
with Houston, yeah.
I think that, generally speaking, the NFL kind of feels the same as well. So, but overall, they've got an opportunity. I mean, it's a growing up and coming team. I would put them in a similar situation as like Detroit. Well coached, good young quarterback, though Detroit doesn't have yet. And they've got an opportunity to build around him, and we'll see how that goes. But it's a tough conference.
It is, but it's not it's the weak division in a tough conference. They were they were a division winner and a playoff team last year. I think they're better. And I don't think the division is. So that's why I had them higher.
Do you think that they take the division? I mean, the Tennessee Titans are in there, Indianapolis Colts, Houston, and them. They seem to be the division winners out of those teams.
They are. they're the only one of those teams in my top 10. And I think they're going to get a bunch of easy wins from, from their division. I think they're going to be up there. I actually had them up at 7. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Interesting. Well, who'd you have at 9 then for you?
I had Cleveland,
Interesting. I've got them a little higher.
which I could have had them higher. But they're such a wild card because there's a talent there. But what do they get out of their quarterback? Can they get the distractions down and focus on football? Can they
Yeah.
take the talent that they've got, especially at quarterback, and actually get stuff out of it? We've not seen it. And it's been now 3 years since Deshaun Watson has played good football, because he didn't play good football last year. He didn't play much last year, but when he did, he didn't look good.
Yeah.
And that was after 2 years of not playing. So it's a long road, and definitely wonder if they're going to be able to put it together or whether they're going to continue to Cleveland this thing up.
It's interesting because for years, at least for me, I've been pretty positive about their roster, and they just really have never gotten out of their own way in essence. I thought they had a really decent offseason. I think their roster is actually really good. They had a few losses, but not that big of a deal. They signed Dalvin Tomlinson to be their defensive tackle. That's a clear upgrade. Juwan Thornhill, their safety, that's an upgrade for them.
Zadarius Smith, the pass rusher.
Yeah, a couple other guys. Marquise Goodwin, wide receiver. He probably has a chance to be their third or fourth wide receiver in this offense, and gives Watson an opportunity. I think a full off season, all the distractions now are away, and you go in and he really takes command. I like it. I'm Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Peoples Jones. You've got their center is Ethan Posick, who, believe it or not, is really decent for them. Wyatt Teller on the offensive line, Jack Conklin, David Njoku to be their tight end. Nick Chubb, obviously, is one of the best running backs in the NFL. And on the other side, they've got Garrett Miles, again, Dalvin Tomlinson, Zadarius Smith, Anthony Walker to be their middle linebacker, Denzel Ward, Juwan Thornhill. I mean, really, Greg Newsome at corner. I think that they've got an opportunity, I think, possibly to get to the, in a division round. For me, because I had them ranked 6th, so I think they're a playoff team. Keith, you may have them outside looking in, possibly based on where you're ranking, and so I'm thinking they're maybe closer to the playoffs than you.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have the talent to be there. I mean, they certainly do. I just don't know whether they're going to put it together. We didn't mention their draft yet. They didn't have first or second round picks. This is all part of the, Deshaun Watson trade and everything. But they ended up getting some good players anyway. Siaki Ika at nose tackle, Cedric Tillman at wide receiver, DeJuan Jones, the mammoth 380-pound offensive tackle, and Luke Weipler, who is an underrated guard/center that didn't come off the board until the 6th round. I think has a chance to come in and get some playing time. There's it was a decent draft given the lack of draft capital. I think they had a good off season. You and I have both been kind of looking at Cleveland and being like, hey, this roster is starting to develop. They're doing a good job. And then every year we seem to get burned. And last year, even with Watson, they didn't look good. And I want to see it. I need to see it. That's why I have them ranked lower.
Yeah, interesting. For me at 7, no, for me at 8, I had the Miami Dolphins.
Interesting.
As my 8th pick overall. They lost Layden Roberts, the outside linebacker, Mike Gesicki, the tight end, a couple other guys, including Brandon Shell. Signed, though, David Long to be their linebacker, backup quarterback Mike White, who played well in the spot starts over for New York. Braxton Berrios is a decent third wide receiver. Guard Dan Feeney, Isaiah Wynn, the tackle, Deshaun Elliott, all, in backup supporting roles, rounds that out. And then in the draft, they didn't pick until the second round, ended up having 4 picks. Cam Smith, the corner I liked, Devon Achene, the running back, is going to give them some dynamic play, receiving out of the backfield. Elijah Higgins and Ryan Hayes probably ends up moving inside to guard, the offensive tackle out of Michigan. But they had a decent roster to begin with. And so, but on my list, I think they're the last team that's outside looking in.
Yeah, this is a team that you've been high on, more so than me in recent years. Um, and I have them in the same spot as you at 8.
Yeah.
To me, I still like the roster. I think they have managed um, to get. Well, I don't know if they're better, but they've managed to stay good as
It
far as
really
a
depends
roster.
on Tua. I mean, if Tua gets better, if Tua has a great season, I think that's how they go. Really, for
Yeah,
me.
I mean, and um, that is kind of the rub on them is what do you do with Tua? Because the he's shown that when he's in there, he plays really well, but he's not in there as much, and the questions with the concussions and how long he's been out and how many he's had really makes me worry, and um
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't get any more. Like, I hope ever nobody does, but specifically because I think he's in a position where long-term damage could be done with additional major concussions like he's had. And it just, like I said, it just worries me. I think that they're going to be um I think they're going to be okay. And they're a team that started strong and faded the last couple of years. And some of that has to do with Tua and his injuries and concussions. So it does make me worry a little bit, and I just can't. Are they going to be able to keep it together and continue to play at that high level all year? I don't know. I'm unconvinced, and that's why I've got them as low as I do.
Yeah, it may come down to them being able to run the ball, because certainly they're going to be able to throw. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, some of the fastest, best 1-2 combo punch that you can get in the NFL.
Although I read
Um,
yesterday that Tyreek Hill may have some legal trouble to deal with now.
What? That's too
Yeah.
bad. That's too bad. But, overall, decent roster. I've got them outside looking in. Their defense is the Achilles heel, I think, for this team again. And we'll see how that goes. Um, at 7, what do you got?
I have Jacksonville. We already talked about.
Okay. I have Baltimore.
Okay.
Yeah, Baltimore is a good team, and I thought that they went out and did what they needed to do to kind of get improved enough, and to give Lamar Jackson, who's coming back full strength, an opportunity to be successful again. He went through this long contract thing. Um, it's still not perfect, but they've got Beckman there, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, Devin Duvernay. They've got a lot of weapons there. Laquan Treadwell, a guy that's going to compete for that last spot at wide receiver. Um, so fun offense, decent offense. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards running the ball for them, and the defense is pretty tough.
Mhm.
So I think that while I've got them 7, they've got an opportunity to maybe rise up to being the 4th best team in the AFC.
Yeah, it's really going to come down to Lamar Jackson's ability to stay healthy, which he hasn't been able to do the last couple of years, which is partly his playing style. He is the most dynamic quarterback in the league still in terms of his ability to move, make people miss, throw the deep ball. He needs to get better at getting the ball out of his hand very quickly from the pocket, so that way he can avoid some of the hits that have cost him time. But he has been talking about that this offseason as he does his press tour, and knowing that he needs to get better at that stuff, and that's what he's been working on. So I think this is a team that is going to be really fun. I just don't know if they have the depth to maintain it all season. Um, but I see them as a playoff team, like fairly easily a playoff team.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
In fact,
So,
I've got them higher than you. I've got them at 5th.
nice. Okay.
So
I had Cleveland at 6. Who do you
my
have your next
I,
pick to talk about?
I have the Chargers at 6.
Okay.
Which I'm was kind of expecting you to have the Chargers earlier.
Yeah, I had them at 5th, actually.
Oh, okay. So we're pretty close on them. I like the Chargers roster, especially, with their quarterback situation being really good. I mean, they've got when you've got that, you got a lot of things, and they added Quentin Johnston, a good, tall, big, deep threat receiver to help them out
Hmm.
in the draft. And overall, the offense has never been the problem the last couple of years. Herbert's going to be able to move the ball. It's what do they got on defense? Can they um, create a defense that isn't awful, because they've been kind of awful the last couple of years, and they added some guys that we thought was going to help them get better last year, and it didn't really work out. But they tried again this year. They brought in Eric Kendricks to at linebacker. He's going to
Yeah.
be one of those guys. Nicholas Williams on the defensive line. These are guys that they are expecting to come in and have um, big important contributions. And those are the only 2 free agents that they added. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they did attack the draft, and they went they got Tui Peloto out of USC for an edge player. Dion Henley out of Washington State, the linebacker, which you and I both liked. Um,
Yeah. And in a
and
4-3 that they run, I think Tuya Polo 2. How do I messed that up completely? But the edge guy out of USC is a perfect fit for them.
yeah,
Perfect
yep.
player, can set that edge in the run game and affect the
Hmm.
pass rush a little bit. And Henley is a super athletic, undersized but super athletic linebacker. Is perfect will in that defense.
Perfect will. Yep. I think those 2 guys, and then Kendricks just upgrade the front of that defense, and makes them more formidable. And when you score as many points as the Chargers do, you need a defense that can generate turnovers and that kind of stuff, and you're okay. You don't have to have a world beater defense. You need one that can get the occasional stop and get the occasional turnover. And I think they've got themselves into that situation finally.
Yeah. I think this is a team in the NFC would probably be the third, maybe the fourth ranked team. Um, and for me, they're my fifth ranked team in the AFC. So, how about you? What's next?
At 5, that's where I have Baltimore.
Okay, how about 4?
Um, at 4, I have the New York Jets,
Yeah, me
which
too.
is so weird to say, right?
Yeah,
I mean, let's be honest, the Jets have been one of those teams that has been like just a bottom dweller. Um, for quite some time, but when you trade for your quarterback and you get Aaron Rodgers to upgrade that position, suddenly you have the ability to compete, because the defense was never a problem. That's actually it was a surprisingly good roster, and I don't think people, because they're the Jets, I don't think people gave them quite the amount of credit that the roster deserved. Um, but now they've got a quarterback to go with it, and
yeah,
and this is just a team that's ready to um, win that, or maybe not win their division, but definitely get into the playoffs and make some noise once they get there. I do still have them as the second best team in their division, though, which I'm sure you can guess based on the teams that we haven't
Yeah.
included yet.
Yeah. I think, they had a few losses. Nathan Shepard at defensive end was going to hurt a little bit. Sheldon Rankins at defensive tackle, Nate Herbig, Mike White, the backup guys, James Robinson, the running back, Braxton Berrios, their third or fourth wide receiver. But they did trade for a quarterback that people may have heard of, and then signed a bunch of guys to help him. Alan Lazard, the wide receiver. They signed Quentin Jefferson. They signed Randall Cobb. I know he's out there, but it's a good veteran for their locker room. Defensive tackle Al Woods, Adrian Amos, the free safety. And then they had a pretty decent draft. I thought Will McDonald is an underrated guy out of Iowa State to be an edge. Joe Tippmann, we were looking heavily at Joe to be a center. Center out of Wisconsin is a good pick for them. Carter Warren, the offensive tackle out of Pittsburgh, could push for playing time. Israel Abakanada, the running back out of Pittsburgh, I thought is a hard runner, probably an underrated running back out of the draft. And Zach Kuntz, one of my favorite tight end prospects from Old Dominion, picked up, I thought, in the late round. I thought maybe he had a chance to go as early as the fourth round just for his athletic upside. One of the best looking receiving tight ends at the combine.
Well, yeah, and it's hard to call him a tight end. He's just so athletic. He's not what people would think of as a tight end. He's got strength, he's got power, he's got speed. What he doesn't have is experience playing against high level competition because he played for Old Dominion.
That's exactly right.
And so he's got a lot of learning to do, but there's a lot of potential there. I like that as a pick. Overall, I think this is a solid roster, good team. They've got some veteran leadership now.
And good coaching.
That helps. It comes down to, do we believe that Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers?
Well, did you see that they signed Nathaniel Hackett to be the offensive coordinator?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, that's interesting to me.
Well,
that's a crazy.
The Broncos signed him to be head coach, hoping to recruit him to Denver, and that failed miserably. But then, so they're like basically trying to get the gang back together in New York with Lazard and Cobb and Rodgers and now Hackett, and they're bringing in all of Rodgers's favorite people, and we'll see how that works.
Interesting. Yeah, they've got Dwayne Brown listed as the starting left tackle on this team as well, still in the league. They've got a really nice offensive line. Yeah, Joe Tippmann to that. I think that offensive line could be one of the best in the NFL. To protect Aaron Rodgers, you got Breece Hall coming back, hopefully, from that knee injury that he had last year. Michael Carter to back him up, and Abakanada to be the third guy. I like the offense a lot. Their defense is nice overall. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they emerge. It's an uphill battle though for them, just to even get out of their own division. You've got Buffalo in front of them. In fact, Buffalo is my third ranked team, Keith.
I've got Buffalo listed as number one.
Wow.
In fact, you and I are going to have the same three teams in our top three.
Okay.
And they're
that's the way that we should talk about this, really.
Yeah. And this is going to be the top three. They're all in different divisions. They're all likely division winners unless, some sort of catastrophic injury happens. It's a matter of where do you place them and all of that. I've got Buffalo 1, you've got Buffalo 3. Obviously, just a tremendously talented roster that I thought got better. I mean, you look at the players they lost versus the players they gained in free agency. They added Taylor Rapp at safety, Leonard Floyd at the edge, Brandon Shell at right tackle, McGovern at guard,
That's an
Puna,
underrated signing.
Pu-
It's the better of the two Connor McGovern that are out there. He's the
yeah,
guard that they signed.
Puna Ford as an interior defensive lineman instead of being a starter like he was in Seattle.
Yeah,
This is like rotational guy.
yeah,
There, overall, I mean, there's just a lot of quality
yeah.
up and
And they
down
they
this
had the best
roster.
pass catching tight end in the draft, and Dalton Kincaid as well, in pick 25 overall in the first round. Nick Broker, the guard from Ole Miss, had a great Senior Bowl, has a chance to come in and play. Uh, Alex Austin, kind of a good sized corner back from Oregon State in the 7th round, should make the roster. So
Hmm.
it was already a um, solid roster, very solid. And the only reason that I had them third is I just like the other two teams slightly better that I've got in
Yeah,
front of them. That's it.
they're
There's nothing wrong with this roster. In fact, this would be arguably the best roster in the NFC. And not saying
oh
that lightly with Philadelphia there and San
yeah.
Francisco.
So you take any of these three teams that we're about to talk about, and all of them would be better than the best team in the NFC. And I'd say that
Today, it could
t-
be, it could flip a little bit. I think Philadelphia has a chance to be really good this year, but
oh, I
we'll
do
see.
too, but but still, and I would put the Jets above the second best team in the NFC. And
I wouldn't go so far. I'm not an Aaron Rodgers fan. I think he's a diminishing returns quarterback. I don't put that much stock into
he's
that team
1 year
yet.
away from back-to-back MVPs.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not feeling it that way, but
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, to me, out of the top 5 teams in the NFL, you've got one NFC team.
okay.
So that tells you how strong the conference
I
is.
think I think that would be it would be a little bit more of a decent conversation if Purdy was 100% healthy and came back and had the same sort of year he had. That San Francisco team has the talent
Yeah,
to compete with these three teams for sure.
but he's not 100% healthy. So I think that, and that's why I've got the Jets above them. When you think about putting all the teams together, I just think 4 out of the top 5 teams are from
Okay.
the AFC.
So
So we're there.
talk to me about Cincinnati and Kansas City a little bit.
So Cincinnati, I have 2. Um,
That we agree on.
that we agree on. So we have 1 and 3 flipped. As and I'm i- it's going to be hard to pick holes in any of these teams if we're being really honest. I really like what Cincinnati did in the draft in order for them to try and get better.
They
Miles,
mitigated their weaknesses.
yeah,
Yes.
Miles Murphy on the edge, DJ Turner at corner, Jordan Battle is
Yeah.
an underrated
Nice.
player at
Yeah, I
safety.
agree.
Notice what they're doing here. They're improving their um, ability to defend the pass because of the guy in Kansas City. Um,
Right.
um, and all of that. And you just this is a team that did a lot there in order to improve, and they were a con- absolute contender last year, and then in the year before they were a Super Bowl team. So uh it's hard to fault really anything that they've done. They didn't lose much
Uh-huh.
in free agency. Um, I mean, you could say maybe
The
because
back end a little bit. I mean, Jesse Bates and Von Bell are hard losses for them at safety. But
yeah, okay. Uh,
Von Bell is excellent. He's an underrated strong safety. Von Bell is, and Jesse Bates. The guy's a good player, a good solid player.
yeah, but they brought in Nick Scott and they drafted
Yes,
Battle. So
yeah,
they
and they got Orlando Brown to be their
mhm,
left tackle too. So
yep. So this is a team that I think is trying to do more than just um, you know, go move laterally. They're still trying to improve. They're trying to go, okay, we got beat because let's go fix that. And I like their chances in the AFC. I think this is an elite
I do
roster.
too. I mean, you talk about a wide receiver room. We just talked about Miami's a little bit ago.
Oh yeah.
Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, 1-2 combo. That could be the best in the league. And then Tyler Boyd is a slot guy. Charlie Jones they picked up from Purdue in the 4th round was a highly valued slot receiver as well. Andre Iosivas out of Princeton, I believe, um, is another draft pick that's underrated. I think had a great Senior Bowl. He really came out and performed well. Their wide receiver room is loaded, and they've got Herb Smith that came over from Minnesota, Drew Sample at tight end. It's a nice roster. It's a really nice roster. And their defense is kind of underrated, I think. Sam Hubbard at defensive, and DJ Reader at the nose tackle, BJ Hill they like at nose tackle, Trey Hendrickson, Miles Murphy you'd mentioned in the draft. Nice, front for them. And they need to get to Deshaun Watson in their own division, and I think that roster is built to do that now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the team that we haven't talked about yet, the Kansas City Chiefs. I've got them as number 1. You've got them as number 3.
I've got them as number 3. And this was hard because, I mean, they're coming off a title. And, there's usually a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover. That's not even why I put him there, but I did think about that. For me, it was more just about the talent they lost. Losing Orlando Brown, their left tackle. Frank Clark in the pass rush, and he doesn't seem to have done much early in seasons during his Kansas City run, but he was instrumental to their Super Bowl teams in terms of his ability to get sacks. And then guys like Juju Smith-Schuster were so solid for them last year, and now he's gone. And I just don't see a lot of replacements for these guys.
They also lost Andrew Wiley, their other tackle. So they lost both their tackles, and they replaced him with Juwan Taylor, signed in free agency. And then Donovan Smith to come in as well. And
those are not upgrades.
Yeah, right. And then they drafted Wynna Morris out of Oklahoma. Now, if that guy can come in and compete, with Donovan Smith for the left tackle spot, hey, great. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. There's a reason why he went almost 100th pick overall in the draft. I did like their draft. They drafted the defensive end out of Kansas State, Rashee Rice, the wide receiver, of course, to add another weapon. And Keandre Coburn, the defensive tackle out of Texas, I thought was one of the best run stuffing tackles in the draft as well. So it's a good team for me. I still, it's hard to knock off a champion in the off season. I thought they did enough in the off season to kind of stay there.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I looked at the talent that they lost, which is anytime you're that good of a team and you go win a title, other teams want your guys. And I just think they lost more than they gained overall this offseason. So they slide back, and it was really close between the top 3 teams last year, and it's going to be really close between the top 3 teams this year.
Yeah, I don't mind Buffalo at the top. I mean, I'd like to see actually Buffalo, have a chance to go to the Super Bowl. I really would, just from a fan standpoint, but we'll see.
Yeah. It's hard to pick against Kansas City given their quarterback, right?
And these 3 teams, Keith, like you said earlier, this is the cream of the crop in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
Now Philadelphia is kind of everyone's pick, and rightly so. I think that they've got a really good roster, good roster. I think San Francisco diminished a little bit, not only in that they didn't add enough, I think, in free agency versus losses to make a difference in wins for them. And then they had an okay draft, and then they've got these question marks at quarterback. I think San Francisco drops out of that top 4 in the NFL overall if the quarterback situation is hampered for them at the beginning of the season, and it very well could be. I think Seattle's underrated overall. I think Detroit's underrated overall in this conversation as being, a top 5 to top 8 team in the NFL and could challenge by the end of the season. I don't know that there necessarily should be placed there right now as far as um, just handing them a top 4, top 5 team in the NFL. But I think Seattle and Detroit is going to be in that conversation by the end of the season. And one of these teams that we're talking about could very well drop back a little bit,
And
and it might be Kansas City.
it comes down to injuries. I mean, with Kansas City, their offense is going to be good because of Mahomes. It's a matter of, can they
Depends on how
protect
their
him?
offensive line. Yeah,
Yeah, can they protect him? Does he have enough weapons? And on defense, can they get to the quarterback? That's my concern.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, they've got Charles Omenihu right now starting on their depth chart at right defensive end. So the
Wow.
kid they drafted from Kansas State is ranked second. That could change, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, good roster, good conversation. It's fun. It's interesting to me. I mean, the clear weight of talent is now in the AFC,
Mm-hmm.
and there are 4 teams that could make the playoffs in the AFC out of the NFC. But you'd have to kick a couple of those AFC teams out, and
Mm-hmm.
it would be tough. I mean, you could say that maybe Seattle and the Browns are somewhat equal, or the Chargers and the Detroit, is somewhat on equal ground and so forth. I mean, but it's interesting to me. I don't know where Seattle falls necessarily. I think there's a lot of pundits out there that have Seattle ranked 12th in the NFL right now. I think that's too low. I think Seattle has got a better roster than that. If Geno shows up the way that he showed up last
There's
year,
a
I think
lot of
Seattle's a top 10
skepticism.
team for sure.
There's a lot of skepticism on Geno Smith. The stuff that I keep reading is there's a lot of,
Yeah.
if he can play like he did last year, then they'll be good.
Yeah.
But they're not respecting that, or not showing that they expect it. And I think that is, I mean, that is what it is. He's got a long career
It's
of
true.
not good, but
The
he's
guy's
had
got to come
1
out
year
and
of
prove it.
great.
I
Yep.
think that's an excellent position to be in if I'm Geno and if I'm the Seahawks is right where they're at with expectations, because you don't want to put too much on him, but I think that he's already putting enough on himself, and he expects to be great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the team expects him to do well and perform just as he did last year. He's got additional weapons this year. His offensive line could be better. His running game is better, I think, at least more dependable anyway. And yeah, I fully expect Seattle to be in the hunt. Really, honestly, I the more I think about this roster, what they've done, um, I expect them to compete in the NFC West, and I expect them to compete in the NFC, and would be disappointed, I think, if they don't win a division game this year and get to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah. I think it's a matter of, some things have to come together for them, specifically the defensive line. And they have to figure out the depth issue at middle linebacker. And if those things work, then the defense will be good enough, because the offense, I think, is going to be great. So, um, yeah, it comes down to that. But overall, and they're in a good spot. They really are. This is, they're still a rebuilding team based on defense, and so it's a matter of, they just got to figure that part out.
Yeah. All right, let's get out of here. Next show is going to be a fun show. We are going to talk about Seahawks history. Both Keith and I go way back with this team, and we're going to talk about some of our favorite players and coaches and memories and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. You're like, we both go way back, and thinking, I'm like, well, we do, but you go back about 6 years before me, just because I'm simply
The
too
very
young.
beginning.
I'm too young to remember the pre Chuck Knox years. Uh, but oh well.
Everyone's got to start someplace. That's why I love all
Yep.
fans. You know, I don't care if you started last week. It is what it is, and it's you know, it just matters, you know, where you're at with it. So
Yeah. I don't
all
believe in
right.
gatekeeping fandom.
Well, I
I
don't
don't like
either.
oh,
I
you're
hate
not
that.
a real fan, or
Yeah,
oh, you don't count because you became a fan in 2012 or 2013. You know what I mean? I'm like, no. I became a
yeah. I don't
fan.
exactly. I
I
don't
became a
talk about
fan
when I
during the 83, 84 seasons when they were good. So it
yeah.
is.
I don't talk about, you know, being a fan since the very first game very often. So this is kind of a nice fun thing for me to be able to talk about. So it'll be a fun show. All right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast. You can find it on any major podcast platform, and we have our own YouTube channel. Go over there and find us, hit the subscribe button, and share it if you like it. So until next time, go Hawks.
Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.